New confusion this Wednesday night over Trump's tariff threat. When is it? March 4th or April 2nd?
It's not fair for us to be supporting Canada.
And what else Canada is expected to prove to the U.S. president? Doubts about what Ukraine and the U.S. have agreed to, what Trump is claiming, and what Zelenskyy says is a deal breaker. Mounting concerns about measles in Canada, the first death in a Texas outbreak, and the advice for people who got vaccinated years ago. And he's being hailed as a harvesting hero.
There's not a lot of black farmers in Canada.
0.2%.
The farmer on a mission to provide food security for black Canadians.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The U.S. president has created more confusion over his tariff threat. Donald Trump appears to be yanking Canada's chain again, saying he may delay the rollout of the 25% punitive tariffs on Canadian imports to the U.S.
I have to tell you that, on April 2nd, I was going to do it on April 1st, but I'm a little bit superstitious, so I made it April 2nd. The tariffs go on, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Is it an April Fool's joke? 2 days ago, Trump said the tariffs were going ahead on time and on schedule on March 4th. Mackenzie Gray begins our coverage on the contradictory messages emerging from the White House.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here.
At his first cabinet meeting since the presidential election, Donald Trump keeping up his attacks on Canada.
It's not fair. It's not fair that they're not paying their way. And if they had to pay their way, they couldn't exist.
And Trump wants Canada to pay an economic price, threatening multiple tariffs. The biggest, a 25% levy on Canadian goods, dropping to 10% for energy products, which has been paused until March 4th, a date that Trump might have just changed.
When does it go into effect?
April 2nd.
April 2nd for Canada, Mexico.
Correct. And for everything.
But the president seemed to mix up his dates. April 2nd is when reciprocal and sector-specific tariffs might come in. The March tariffs are tied to stopping the already minor amount of fentanyl that comes from Canada to the U.S., leading the Commerce Secretary to try and stop the confusion.
The fentanyl-related things, they're working hard on the border. At the end of that 30 days, they have to prove to the president that they've satisfied him to that regard. If they have, then he'll give them a pause, or he won't. But that's up to him to see.
Trump's quick dismissal of Howard Lutnick underscoring what Canadian government sources have told Global News. They view the Commerce Secretary, the person in charge of implementing any tariffs, as having limited influence over the president.
Prime Minister, what have you heard from Donald Trump about the tariffs?
At a Canadian cabinet meeting, the Prime Minister blowing by the cameras, leaving it to his ministers to make sense of the consistently moving goalposts on U.S. tariffs.
We act on the basis of signed documents by, the executive orders that would be issued.
Justin Trudeau also speaking with the premiers, a meeting BC's David Eby used to propose putting an export tax on thermal coal sold to the U.S.
If there are things that we can do to respond to the Americans, we should do it. If there are things we can do to strengthen our economy and diversify our markets, we're going to do it.
Trump's continued Canada bashing leading the NDP to say the president shouldn't be invited to the G7 scheduled for this June in Alberta.
As a host, we should work with other countries to develop a strategy on how we can resist the very dangerous ideas that Donald Trump's putting forward.
Trump has called for Russia to be invited back to the G7 11 years after it was kicked out of the group, Donna, by a unanimous vote. And a similar move would likely be needed for Trump to not be invited to Kananaskis.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. Trump's tariffs are a moving target. Provincial premiers are trying to prepare for what's coming and shift the focus from north-south trade to east-west trade. Nova Scotia is the first province to table legislation that will simplify interprovincial trade, but only with provinces and territories that agree to play by the same new rules. Heidi Petrachuk explains what's planned and why some business owners are skeptical.
This Ontario company specializes in manufacturing doors and windows, but when it comes to sales, the doors to other provinces are closed.
I think it's a shame that we are able to sell and service product in New York State, even in today's environment, more easily than we can in Hull, Quebec.
70% of Jack Schinder's business is south of the border. Removing interprovincial trade barriers, he says, would ease the potential pain of U.S. tariffs.
It would improve our local sales and service business dramatically.
The looming tariff threat has pushed premiers to break down entrenched internal trade barriers. Nova Scotia's PC government, the first to table legislation to allow goods and services to cross interprovincial lines without jumping through jurisdictional hoops. It would mean this Nova Scotia distillery could sell in other provinces without the costly red tape, and would remove the requirement for truckers to meet different regulations every time they cross a provincial borderline. But Tim Houston has said the road must go both ways, and business owners agree.
It's the classic, if one door is wide open and all the others are shut, that's not great for the wide open door province.
Ontario's Doug Ford supports the idea, but he's busy with the provincial election. While in BC, David Eby's government has said it would put forward legislation, but that hasn't happened yet.
British Columbia continues to push for a mutual recognition approach. This is where if it's good enough for your province, it's good enough for our province.
And I don't think it should actually be reliant on tariffs or on the politics of the U.S. I think it's time for us to stand up for ourselves.
Back in Ottawa,
I won't believe it until it actually becomes real.
Jack Schinder is looking for new doors to open, even as another may close. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
We have some breaking news from Manitoba tonight. The province says potential human remains have been discovered at a landfill north of Winnipeg. Search teams have been working to find the remains of two First Nations women, Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron. It's believed they may have ended up at the Prairie Green landfill after being disposed of in May of 2022. The women, along with two others, were the victims of a serial killer convicted last year. The RCMP and the chief medical examiner are now involved, and the province says the families of both women have been notified. The Liberal Party has begun voting to choose who will replace Justin Trudeau as leader. Registered party members have until March 9th to cast their ballots. As Taria Isri reports, one issue seems to be dominating: those threats from south of the border.
That's going to happen. We want to be the ones.
Who has what it takes to take on Donald Trump? It's the question dominating Canadian politics.
Canadians are a bit broken up on that right now.
Ipsos asked this in an exclusive poll for Global News. A tough negotiator, who could get the best deal for Canada from President Trump? 28% answered Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, while 23% said Liberal leadership frontrunner Mark Carney.
Our own little version of Trump here at home.
The four candidates tried to tie Poilievre to the president Tuesday.
President Trump.
In a debate largely focused on Trump's tariff threats.
The Donald Trump of today is different.
If he hits us, we'll hit him back. We have to talk to him.
This is a shakedown.
Carney's entrance has helped close the gap between Conservatives and Liberals.
They have wind in their sails. And we've seen a significant shift.
But the Conservatives are accusing Carney of misleading Canadians over his role in the investing firm Brookfield and its decision to move headquarters from Canada to the U.S.
The formal decision of the board happened after I ceased to be on the board.
That decision was announced in October. Carney resigned as chairman months later.
He's demonstrably lied to Canadians.
Carney's campaign calls the changes technical in nature and says Poilievre is scared of running against him. The Ipsos polling also found the top priority for Canadians is inflation, with healthcare second, while Canada's relationship with the U.S. jumped to third, surpassing the issue of housing and underscoring just how concerned Canadians are with Trump. Donna?
All right, Taria Isri in Montreal, thank you.
Anybody unhappy with it? If you are, we'll throw them out of here. Is anybody unhappy?
That was an awkward moment. Trump asked his cabinet today if anyone was unhappy with Elon Musk's performance. No one spoke up. Musk didn't have an actual seat at the table, but the billionaire was invited to be there, and he loomed large. Jackson Prosco is with me now. Jackson, what did this first cabinet meeting reveal about the way Trump will run his second administration?
Well, Donna, a few things stood out, namely Elon Musk. Trump actually called on him to speak before any of his cabinet secretaries. Wearing a baseball cap, Musk flashed a T-shirt that read tech support as he dominated the first part of the meeting. He predicted that America would go bankrupt without his interventions to cut spending. He said his goal is a $1 trillion deficit reduction by 2026. By the way, that is half of what he promised during the campaign. And Musk acknowledged that, yes, he has moved too fast with some of his cuts.
We will make mistakes. We won't be perfect. But when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly. So, for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola, Ebola prevention. I think we all want Ebola prevention. So we restored the Ebola prevention immediately.
Trump heaped praise on Musk and suggested the two are in lockstep over the mass layoffs of federal workers. And then we saw a shift where Trump really tried to exert his dominance in the room after he was asked how far his executive authority goes with his own cabinet.
Oh, yeah, they'll follow the orders, yes, they will.
No exceptions.
No exception. Well, let's see, let me think. Oh, yeah. She'll have an exception. Of course, no exceptions. You know that.
What does all of this tell us? Well, first, it really does suggest this is a Trump-Musk administration. Second, every time Trump gives Musk the floor, he moves rather quickly to reel him back in. But ultimately, Donna, it seems like Trump is entirely comfortable with the actions Musk is carrying out, even if there clearly is a little bit of discomfort in the room.
Okay, Jackson in Washington, thank you. There is a lack of clarity tonight about what exactly Ukraine has agreed to with the U.S. Here's what President Trump said today.
President Zelenskyy is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed, and we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement.
Zelenskyy himself has not confirmed he's making that trip, and he's not calling what's been agreed to a deal, but rather a framework tied to giving the U.S. access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals. It's payback for American military support of Ukraine's war with Russia. But Zelenskyy insists Ukraine needs security guarantees to protect it from Russian aggression before anything is set in stone. Redmond Shannon explains.
The key to ending bloody war in Ukraine could lie in the dirt.
We very much need rare earth. They have great rare earth.
The U.S. president says Volodymyr Zelenskyy is 2 days away from signing a deal on the U.S. accessing Ukraine's rare earth minerals. Donald Trump says that can help Kyiv pay back the hundreds of billions of dollars in aid he claims the U.S. has given to Ukraine.
Most estimates guess that the rare earth industry is maybe worth $5 billion.
That suggests the U.S. would want much more than rare earths, perhaps other metals and fossil fuels too. Those details, like much of the deal, remain unknown or undecided, including whether the U.S. will help guarantee Ukraine's security in the future, a deal breaker for Kyiv.
And if we don't have it, nothing will work. So we will have nothing. I have questions, and we very need answers, very honest answers.
Trump's current position that protecting Ukraine will be Europe's problem.
Well, I'm not going to make security guarantees beyond very much. We're going to have Europe do that.
European leaders say they can't do it alone.
There has to be US backing, because otherwise I don't think it will deter Putin.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who says UK troops could be part of a peacekeeping force in Ukraine, meets Trump in Washington Thursday. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Russia will not accept that plan, even though Trump claimed Russian President Vladimir Putin would. US and Russian diplomats meet in Turkey on Thursday as part of efforts to restore their diplomatic relations. Donna?
Redmond Shannon in London, thanks. An unvaccinated child dies of measles in Texas. Coming up, how the virus is also spreading in Canada and the advice to people who got vaccinated years ago. This is the moment a 6-story parking garage partially collapsed in downtown Ottawa. There were no injuries, but about 50 vehicles are stuck inside. Authorities say heavy snow on the top level may be to blame. Structural engineers are now assessing the damage to determine if the parking garage has to be demolished. An unvaccinated child in Texas has died from measles, the first death in an outbreak that began there late last month. It is the first pediatric death from measles in the U.S. in 22 years. The number of cases in Canada is also on the rise, the vast majority in people who are not vaccinated. Katherine Ward explains why it's spreading and how you can protect yourself.
The death of a school-aged child in the Texas measles outbreak, a tragic reminder about the seriousness of the infection.
When you see a child dying of a preventable disease, it is absolutely heartbreaking.
State health department officials in Texas say the outbreak is concentrated in a close-knit, under-vaccinated Mennonite community. 124 cases have been confirmed.
Because it's so transmissible, you need vaccine rates of well over 90%, preferably over 95%, to really prevent ongoing transmission in a community.
We're watching it, and there are about 20 people hospitalized.
In Canada, Dr. Theresa Tam says cases continue to climb.
As of February the 21st of this year, and since the beginning of the year, there have been 95 cases reported in Canada.
Cases have been reported in BC, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. At last count, 45% of cases were in children aged 5 to 17. 78% of all cases were in unvaccinated people. There were 146 measles cases for all of 2024. It's presumed if you were born before 1970 that you were exposed to measles. Data shows measles vaccines are highly effective, and for anyone born later, a full series now means you've had 2 shots. Some doctors say it's too soon to know if boosters will be needed in the future.
People born in, for example, 1971 aren't that young anymore, and they might have received 2 doses of a measles vaccine or 1 dose of a measles vaccine, but they may not have the same degree of immunity.
There's currently no recommendation for additional doses beyond 2 doses.
If you don't know how many shots you've had, public health researchers say it is safe to get another.
If you're unsure whether you've gotten both doses of the MMR vaccine, or if you feel that you may be under-vaccinated, you can simply request your family doctor to give you another dose of the MMR.
Katherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
You know you love me. XOXO, Gossip Girl.
Actress Michelle Trachtenberg, best known for her role in TV's Gossip Girl and in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, has died at the age of 39. Her public relations team confirmed her death today but didn't give any details. Trachtenberg rose to fame when she was just 10 years old. Her first role was in the film Harriet the Spy. The New York Post is reporting the actress recently had a liver transplant. United in grief. Ahead, thousands line the streets for the funeral of 3 Israeli hostages. There was a national outpouring of grief in Israel today for the Bibas family. Cherie Bibas and her 2 sons, aged 4 years and 9 months, were killed in captivity in Gaza. Their bodies were returned by Hamas last week. The procession wound through central Israel to a gravesite near Kibbutz Nir Oz, where the 3 were kidnapped October 7th. Cherie's sister-in-law was among those who spoke at the funeral. She criticized the Netanyahu government for making the destruction of Hamas a priority over getting the hostages released.
יכלו להציל אתכם והעדיפו נקמה. אנחנו הפסדנו. תמונת הניצחון שלנו כבר לא תקרה.
Cherie and her 2 sons were buried in the same casket next to the boys' grandparents, who were also killed in the attack. Late tonight, the bodies of 4 more Israeli hostages were handed over by Hamas in Gaza to the Red Cross and taken through a crossing into Israel. As part of the exchange, a convoy carrying dozens of Palestinians held in an Israeli jail made its way to the West Bank, where they were met by crowds of cheering families. Also today, the U.S. president shared a video on his social media site, a video created by AI and promoting Trump's plan to take over Gaza and develop it. It shows children running from the rubble to a glitzy resort called Trump Gaza, with Elon Musk eating hummus and Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister tanning on the beach. It has been widely condemned as offensive. This is the real Gaza, much of it in ruins. There's still a humanitarian crisis. Trump has said Palestinians should be forced out of Gaza so it can be developed. Palestinians and Israel's neighbors reject that. This man says those who want to come and provide assistance to Gaza and rebuild Gaza we say welcome. Next, a BC farmer on a mission to reduce food insecurity in the Black community. With the soaring cost of living, food insecurity hits home for many Canadians. A man in BC is trying to change that. As Jason Pires reports, he's growing traditional ingredients and encouraging others to follow in his footsteps.
Even in the winter, Nigerian-born Toyoin Ije is blazing trails.
I bet you they don't have snow in Nigeria, though.
No. He's a big part of a tiny fraternity in Canada. He is 100% committed to not just farming, but providing affordable, culturally preferred food.
So this is?
Cassava.
For Canada's Black, African, and Caribbean communities.
90% of the food that most Africans eat here in Canada still come from our country of origin. We are creating a new agricultural economy in Canada. It's peppered with our heirloom tomatoes.
But now with food insecurity concerns on the rise, the founder of the Canadian Black Farmers Association is expanding.
This is our new commercial greenhouse.
Erecting a new greenhouse at his farm. The dirty little secret behind his operation, the soil.
So essentially you have created the soil that you find in Nigeria here in Mission.
Yeah, in Mission. That's the magic.
Magic, of course, includes manure, goat manure, and Tioyan has lots in supply.
The manure, very, very good for what we are doing.
The proof is in the kitchen. He's making hay out of his surroundings, educating and offering hands-on training for others on how to get their start in the agricultural industry in Canada.
Seeing is believing. If I can sacrifice whatever I can to be able to show the people that this is viable.
He's a harvesting hero for BC's Black community. Tioyan is a shining example of self-sufficiency during these uncertain times.
Let's grow this. Let's work together. Black food alone can bring so much economy to Canada. And the Canadian Black people, African, Caribbean, they can have a very powerful, sustainable economy. And it will benefit everybody.
Jason Pires, Global News, Mission, BC.
And that is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Niagara Falls, Ontario. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.